in Trinidad and Tobago on the 1st of June 2008. According to the commentator Steve Wilson, it was 84 degrees at kickoff, and the pitch looked terrible, rock solid. Ball was bobbling about all over the place. Not ideal conditions, perhaps, for your first England cap, but watching you line up for the national anthem, and the national anthem was played by a steel band as well, which was a nice little moment. I mean, how proud were you in that moment? What are your memories of that moment, lining up when the anthem playing, ready to make your first appearance for England?
Well, well done for sitting through the full 45, by the way. It was, I think, look, when you're a kid and you're in the garden, you are an England striker. I was Gary Lineker at the time. You know, it was 1990. Lineker took the ball out of the sky with his right knee and smashed it past the German goalkeeper in the semi-final of the World Cup. And that was me hooked. And from that moment on, my dream was to play for England and be part of an England side and stand there and sing the national anthem. So I think once you get there, albeit you're already at an elite level and you've already achieved some dreams of your own in terms of Premier League and playing against the best players, etc., there's nothing quite like sort of walking out and lining up and kind of just having a little glance left and right at the talent that you're alongside and what that means. And that in that moment, you're one of the 11 best players in the country, and it's your job to represent the country in this match. And then the national anthem plays. You just can't ever take that away from me. It's something that the feeling's just too incredible to kind of explain. It's that the pride you feel that you've been able to get to that point, and it's you that gets to live it, is amazing, and it's always something I can look back on with immense pride that I was able to achieve. And luckily, at that moment, the heat didn't mean that there was too much sweat coming off my head.
Something that kind of has been a constant in following England all my life is this perception that international football kind of should be easy. Like when you look at the teams and the quality difference between an England team or whoever else up against a minnow, that the scoreline should be much more, much bigger scorelines, much wider margins between the teams, and actually it ends up being the case. It's something that ended up, being a big criticism of Gareth Southgate, where despite our relentlessly good record against these smaller sides, we should be beating them easier. It was a criticism levelled at Thomas Tuchel in his first games, where people spoke about how it was more of the same. As someone who lived playing against, realistically, that team that England put out against, you kind of said it yourself, you had Clayton Ince in goal against you, and you had David Beckham feeding you the ball on the right-hand side. Like, you can't get a bigger disparity in terms of where those two players, played the game in their careers. Why is it that, how difficult is it to shove a group of elite players together and make them into a functional team capable of breaking down a side where realistically it should be probably more comfortable than a 3-0 win?
I think it is difficult, but I think what Gareth Southgate showed was that if you get a good set of players, and there's unity in there, and there's players that can't wait to join up with the squad and enjoy being part of it, that it's definitely easier than if you've got a squad at the time. And I know some of the players have talked about it. Rio and Frank Lampard have talked about it in particular, how it was a difficult time to be in an England squad because of there wasn't maybe the unity that you needed, even though there was the quality. So I think it was difficult in that sense. And also, it was the first time I'd really got a sense of just what it means to the opposition to play England. And you talked about it being the centenary sort of celebration, and it felt like that. It felt like this was one of the biggest things that had kind of come to the island. For it was packed. Do you know what I mean?
They're going mad every time Beckham takes a corner. You can hear the crowd are just going wild because they're seeing Beckham.
Yeah, exactly. And he's a phenomenon by himself. And I just remember we got off the plane and the coach was waiting for us, but not the coach that we'd got off in England, which was branded with England badges and was like incredible quality, proper leather seats, TVs, coffee machines, you name it. It was like awesome. And then we get off the flight in Trinidad and just picture that bus you got on in the 90s where, the seat covers were like the tube and there was literally nothing. It was like the school kitchen floor on the bottom of the bus. And that's what we were then jumping into. But surrounding it was thousands of people waiting to see mainly David Beckham and to see the England team, jump on the bus. And then getting just from the airport to the hotel was madness. The amount of people at the hotel, it was just something I'd never experienced before, and maybe just had a little look through the glass at what David Beckham and the likes had to deal with on a regular basis, because it was just bedlam. And it was the same on the match day and leading up to the game, and the atmosphere within the stadium leading up to the game, which helped me, I thought, in terms of feeling like a big game, but just showed what it means to these nations to play England and to play some of the top players in world football.
I'm quite interested to know if you remember pre-match any instructions or team talks or tactical information that you got from Capello or the coaches, because a lot's been said about Capello's reign since, and obviously it didn't end well. But at this point, he's doing quite well for England. It's gone quite well for him since he's taken over. And when we head into the 2010 World Cup, it's all looking good up to that point. But what was he like as a coach? Obviously, you would have known all about him in terms of him being a legendary manager at that point. But what were your impressions of him, working with him?
Well, yeah, I was in awe to start with. This is one of the greatest managers I'd ever seen, and some of the teams that he'd produced and the players that he'd coached was absolutely incredible. So it felt a privilege to be part of a squad where I was going to be coached by him. There was an emphasis on work, which maybe it didn't surprise me, because I think Italians inherently work incredibly hard and train really hard, and at times train twice a day, etc. So I knew that sort of thing. So don't
forget the Italians have a siesta after lunch. That's why they're able to work so hard in the mornings and the afternoons. I want to make that clear. True. We've missed out on that culturally.
Very, very true. But I think that the detail was there from him in terms of what he wanted from the side. He understood that you had one of the best midfielders in the world in Steven Gerrard. How was the ball going to be worked to give him the space? Gareth Barry, obviously his job was to be that player to drive, to open the space for Gerrard to get hold of the ball. For us as forwards to make sure that we're moving away from David Beckham and allowing the full-back to overlap so that David Beckham can get the ball in space. So you had these two players in particular that I think Capello wanted to get the most out of. And I think that was what I remember very much so before the Trinidad game. I think the day before, he didn't say a lot on the day. He was really calm, actually, and just kind of going around being really calm and just a few words here and there to certain players. His English wasn't amazing, but definitely the day before, I vividly remember how things are going to work, the movement needed to get Gerrard first on the ball, David Beckham in space on the ball, and then we're all going to benefit because of it. And Stuart Downing keeping his width on the left-hand side. And I felt like it worked at times in that game, and the right-hand side was what we were trying to open up.
England did have a lot of joy on both wings, but actually particularly down the left with Bridge and Downing combining really well. They gave the Trinidadian right-back, Kern Cupid, a torrid time. He had a really difficult first 45 minutes, and Gareth Barry actually had a great game. Not a vintage performance from Steven Gerrard, this one. Got booked in the first half. To be honest, looked like he probably was, just kind of keeping it steady and phoning in a little bit. But a lot of joy down that left. And Gareth Barry's goal comes from a move down the left, which you're involved in. You come deep, you lay it off to Bridge. Bridge plays a 1-2 with Downing and gets in. And you nearly get on the end of the cross, actually. You're sort of straining to try and get a touch on it, but you're on the near post and it goes into the middle and Barry volleys it home. So it's those fine margins.
It is, yeah, you're right. And having watched it back a few years ago, that's, again, something I looked at and remember just feeling like you miss out on those tiny details. But ultimately, you need more games to hopefully get in the right position and it fall for you on a different occasion. But look, Bridge and Downing in their own rights were quality players, so no surprise to see them combine and be a threat down the left-hand side. Again, it's I sort of look back and I think, what could I have done any more? And I don't really think I could have done, and that's okay. I think
Jermaine Defoe could have squared it to you instead of shooting himself for his goal.
He could have done, but I wouldn't have.
Have you met Jermaine Defoe? I get the feeling like when Dave goes on Mastermind in about a year's time, his special subject's going to be Dean Ashton's international career.
This is a really weird. With no offence to you, Dino, I know it's your England cap. It's a weird international break for so many reasons. Not least the scenario of England not going to the Euros. The home game against the USA at Wembley in front of 70,000, where you are one of 12 unused subs. 6 subs came on, so 18 subs named, so that's a squad of 29. That's because, as you mentioned, Champions League final's been played just before, and in the home game, there's Wes Brown, Owen Hargreaves, Rio, Wayne Rooney starting, Man United players. There's Terry, Ashley Cole, Frank Lampard starting with Joe Cole and Wayne Bridge on the bench. So 10 players who'd been involved in that game, but then flying out to Trinidad, a couple of them get to miss that one, and bizarrely Rio Ferdinand's there and Wayne Bridge are there, but no other United or Chelsea players. So I'm not sure why Rio was forced or maybe volunteered to go and play when everyone else from United and Chelsea weren't. But I mean, from your point of view, having sat unused at Wembley, I imagine some family and friends might have come to potentially see you represent your nation at Wembley, as discussed, a real dream of yours. To sit there unused, and then also to have been hooked at half-time. Had you been told that was going to happen, or were you told as you walked off in 1,000-degree heat, having just worked your arse off when half the team were phoning it in? I mean, I feel pissed off for you.
And I was a little bit at the time. I didn't know that I was going to be taken off at half-time against Trinidad and Tobago. But I guess once I kind of, got over that within a couple of minutes, having then thought, wow, what have I just done? I've made my England debut, and what an amazing feeling that is. And again, I'm not thinking that's going to be my only minutes in an England shirt at that particular moment. So I was okay. I was okay about it, but it wasn't something I knew about. And initially, obviously, I was gutted because I wanted to go back out and hopefully, as they tired and fresh legs came on, I might have got a chance to score. But the USA game, again, I knew nothing about whether I was going to get on, or there was no kind of structure to substitutions being made. So I just was going there thinking and hoping I would get my chance to come on. And you're right, my parents were there, family and friends were there, and you're expectant. It's Wembley, it's packed, and it was just such a weird feeling because we're in the dressing room and everyone's getting ready. I knew I obviously wasn't starting, and the starting 11 went out to warm up, but no substitutions went at that point. And I was kind of looking around thinking, are we not all going out together? And then I think it was Capello's assistant sort of said, if you want to warm up, you can, but you don't need to.
What?
So obviously there's a few of us that are like in the squad for the first time. Me personally, I was just like, there's no way I'm not going out and just at least enjoying taking it in. You're at Wembley, get a few touches of the ball, go into the shooting session before going in. But probably 6 or 7 didn't go out to warm up. It felt such a bizarre situation to be in. But I went out, I loved it. I know it was only the warm up, but it felt special to be out there and sort of taking in Wembley and an England game. And then obviously sat on the bench and watched the game, hoping I would get on, warming up as vigorously as I could do to try and get the manager's attention. But it obviously just wasn't meant to be at that time for me. And there's part of me that thinks would I have wanted just 2 minutes at the end at Wembley, or would I have wanted a proper start at Wembley and been in the starting 11? I'm not too sure once I got to that point. But it was just that bit before the game. It was bizarre to me.
Substitution for England coming on for number 9, Jermaine Defoe. Number 26, welcome Dean Ashton. I think you'd have taken that, wouldn't you?
Yeah, yeah, good point. Yeah, good point. As a paper aeroplane hit me on the
head. In terms of the actual experience itself, like you, as we'll get on to later on in the discussion, this wasn't your first England camp. You'd been involved in one previously. What was it like? Like, obviously these are players that you played against consistently in the Premier League, but was it a friendly place to be? Were they, were the likes of Beckham and Ferdinand, were they welcoming? Were they the senior pros who'd kind of usher you in and take you under their arm, or was it a hostile atmosphere? Like, as you say, that the fact that Trinidad and USA camp was off the back of the Champions League final and came at a time where England hadn't qualified for the Euros, and presumably most of these players just wanted to go on holiday, it must have made for quite a weird atmosphere.
It did, yeah. And I think it was just a glimpse into what some of the squads must have been like previous to me being in them, and probably the big reason why England weren't successful at that time, when they clearly had the talent to take on the world. It never quite happened. And I remember walking in for the first time and sensing a bit that there was cliques, and the Chelsea lads were together, the Man United lads were together, the Liverpool lads were together, and there was a bit of a void in between for new players coming in.
You sat with all the Middlesbrough lads and the West Ham lads.
Yeah, well, I had to avoid
the lads.
I had to avoid the goalkeepers, whatever I did. But yeah, luckily for me, there was some new lads, so it was a table of newbies basically that we sort of sat down, and it was. Look, there's part of me that looks at those players and thinks, how difficult must that have been for them after the Champions League final, for those that won it, and the feelings towards those that had lost it, including Terry, who slipped and didn't score his pen. It's not an easy environment to then suddenly be thrown into. So I can understand that. But as somebody that's coming new into the squad and wants to try and integrate yourself in and feel comfortable, it didn't help. And I think that was probably one of the big problems with England at the time, was that it felt difficult to feel comfortable within an England camp with an England shirt on, because of that. David Beckham was the captain, but didn't speak to me. So it's difficult to gain a rapport with somebody that doesn't make the effort.
Didn't speak to you at all?
Not really, no. Other than good mornings and nods here and there, there wasn't maybe that effort to come over, really sort of integrate me in and welcome me in and be part of it that you would probably expect at the time.
Which clique was David Beckham in? Because he's playing for LA Galaxy at the time.
Yeah, true. Very true.
He sat with you and Stuart Downing.
He probably had a table of celebs that were invited in as part of the camp.